I'm feeling very put together today, and that just seems to be my new filming schedule now. Hi everyone, my name is Maddie, and welcome back to my channel, or thanks for joining us if you're new here. I'm feeling, as I said in the intro, very put together today. I'm vibing with the fit, and apparently I just film what I want to see show off, what I'm wearing. So that's where we're at now. No, but in all seriousness, I did want to put together this video to get some more content out to you guys by the end of this week. And today's topic that I wanted to kind of cover is I'm going to talk about all the books that I'm reading right now and how I manage that all. So I'm currently in university and I'm doing a double major in English, and then the other program I'm doing is called Gender Equality and Social Justice. So it's kind of like a broad span human rights program, I guess is the best way that I could describe that. I guess it goes beyond human rights because we study animal rights and things like that too. So just a broad, like, social justice based program. And I really love my 2 degrees. I love the overlap between them. But it does mean I am buried in reading sometimes. I think I had a bit of a, I don't want to say a false introduction to university, but I was in a gifted program growing up, and I was so stressed with the amount of schoolwork that they put on us sometimes that I was like sobbing at home. So coming to university when they were like, it's going to be really hard, I was like, it's not, because like high school was like a breeze because of this, like the gifted program that I've been in middle school, and the first year of university I think was also partly a breeze because there was a lot of these like broad spectrum courses I had to take. Like I had to take an academic writing class that was basically, this is how you write an essay, and I had to take a science credit to do like a breadth requirement for my degree, and it was basically like grade 11 10 science, so it was a bit of a write-off. And then in my second year I was serving as part of our residence council, so I was like having sometimes like 7 meetings a week or something crazy like that, on top of running and facilitating programs and helping the rest of my team facilitate those programs and taking a full course load. It's actually kind of funny because in my second year I took a course overload in my second semester, and I was less stressed doing that course overload than I was in the first semester. And I think it was just the combination of courses that I had, plus I also had these like weird windows in between my classes, and I wasn't very good at like making sure I had like lunch and things to do in between them, so that didn't always help me out. But now I have my wonderful third year wisdom to bring to you of how I manage to keep on top of everything that I'm reading for all of my classes and not go crazy, because I've had that happen before. So the first book that I'm reading is for one of my English classes, and it is Dracula by Bram Stoker. I started reading this, I think it was either the end of January or the beginning of February, and pretty much with this book I'm reading 15 pages a day, and as long as I do that I will be done by the time that we study in class. So this is something that I'm not sure will work for everyone. It was definitely something that I was very against in high school. When I was in high school, I very much hated the like assigned reading things where they would be like, okay, you have to have the first chunk of the book done by here, the second chunk done by here. Sometimes I would just go home and like read the whole book in one sitting, and then in class discussions I'd be sitting there like, I know something that you don't know, but I'm not allowed to say it out loud. Either way, I was just reading when I wanted to read in order to enjoy it. And as much as I would love to do that in university, sometimes I have 3 or 4 novels that I have to be reading on the go at once. So if I don't plan ahead, it's not going to happen. So it's a matter of me looking at my schedule, figuring out how much I think is achievable for me to read within a day, depending on what type of book it is. Like I took a children's literature course, so sometimes I could get like 25 pages of that book a day or something, because there was pictures or the font was really big and there wasn't that much going on a page. For older books or classical literature, I tend to give myself a little bit less, just so that I know that I'm like fully processing. And honestly, that's a good trick for trying to get through classic literature or a book that you're struggling with, is just like 10 pages a day. Like pick something simple, something that's pretty achievable, and you'll be good. Because I've been finding that with Dracula, I mean, it's a good read, but also I sit down and read it with breakfast every day, and then I'm good for the day, and I know that I'm not going to be stressing myself out trying to read the last 100 pages before we do my lecture. So that's something that I usually plan out at the beginning of the semester. Is I sit down, figure out, basically take the number of pages of the book, divide it by how many pages I want to read a day, and then count back from when it has to be read and be like, okay, this is when I'm starting to read it. I guess I should talk a little bit more about whether I'm enjoying the things that I'm reading. I am really enjoying Dracula. It's very interesting to me to figure out like where the lore came from, and I just love monster literature in general. You know, you got that classic where it's like the woman can't come along because she's too fragile, even though Mina is like the most competent person in this book. But I am almost, I guess I have 100 pages left, and then the rest is just literary notes, so I am interested to see how it all comes together in the end, because I don't really know how it ends, which I like when I can go back and read a classic and not have had it spoiled for me. A little bit different than that is, I know this book looks daunting, but it's because it's a complete collection of Shakespeare, is I'm currently reading The Merchant of Venice for a cross-dressing and literature class that I'm taking, and this one I kind of did bad and I didn't follow my schedule, but similarly I just kind of took the acts and I split them up. I was like, I want to do the first half of the play one week, I want to do the second half of the play the next week, and we'll go forward from there. The Merchant of Venice that I'm reading, on the other hand, I think at just about at Act 3, and damn, this book is really anti-Semitic and racist. Not a fan. Shakespeare, what were you doing? I know it's a play, and I know it's like written in the, I guess, 1600s? Probably. That's when Shakespeare was alive, right? It's either before or after the 1600s, depending what period he wrote it in. But yes, it's a very strange play. Essentially, there's like a Jewish moneylender, and then this super anti-Semitic guy who is like, I don't like you, but my friend needs to borrow money from you, so I'll like back him up. And he's like, okay, cool, I'll lend you the money, but because I hate you and you hate me, if you don't give me the money, you have to give me a pound of your flesh. And we're going to see how that goes, because I get an odd feeling he's not going to have all the money. So that's something else that I'm working on. This is a little bit slower for me to get through just because of the language and then me like conferring with Spark Notes to make sure I am understanding it properly. So making sure that I'm giving myself time to process everything that is happening. Although sometimes I'm like, is that what that line just said? And then I look it up and that is actually what the line just said. So who knows? After this, I have 3 other books that I'm reading, not actually for my English courses, but for one of my gender courses. So this is for my class on the opioid crisis, which is really heartbreaking, but also really fascinating, and I've definitely learned so much about addiction and the war on drugs and how much of a disaster it all is, and the stigma is so bad. We just need to decriminalize them. But it's fine, I'm not going to get into a rant about it right now. So the 3 books that I'm reading for that class are Chasing the Scream, which is by Johann Hari, who is a British author, and essentially he's traveling to try and figure out the origins of the war on drugs and how that's kind of continued and managed to impact him, even though it essentially started in the States. And the next one is Overdose, which is a brand new book, and this is Heartbreak and Hope in Canada's Opioid Crisis, which is written by Benjamin Perrin. So this is specifically looking at the overdose crisis through a Canadian lens, because it's mad what's happening in some of the major cities right now, and of course because of the stigmatization around drug addiction, it doesn't really get reported on. It's very interesting to have, like, I think this book just came out in 2020, so a very fresh look on that. And then in the realm of Hungry Ghosts, which is by Gabor Mate, who is a Canadian doctor who is very well known for his books on addiction and his, I guess, research and experience working with addicts, which is also a very excellent book. He works in Vancouver, which, woohoo, Canadian representation, but also bad that Canada's not doing a good job at addressing this opioid crisis. So the way that I'm kind of working with these books is a little bit different than the way that I'm working with some of my other books. And depending on, I don't know if you're watching this, if you go to university, this might relate to you, it might not. My professor in this course has actually split the books up for us. So that makes life a little bit easier, because she'll be like, okay, this is what you have to read, these chapters from these books. It still can like come down to about 100 pages a week. So when I'm making my to-do list in my bullet journal, I make sure to write them down by chapter, because 1, it makes me feel more accomplished when I get to like cross off the different chapters at a time, and 2, it just breaks it down into more manageable chunks. So instead of sitting down with the feeling like I have to read 120 pages right now, being like, okay, I'll get a chapter done, and then I'll get some more work done, and then maybe read another chapter or 2 before I go to bed. It does help that these books are very well written in the narrative sense, and they're not very clunky, because I've had it before where I'm reading books for class, and they're very, like, textbook-like in their readings. Some of the other course readings that I have to do that are just articles or things like that can be like 20 pages of very dry academic writing. So just knowing what I can get into my brain in one sitting is very important. But yes, making sure that when I'm picking how much of these books I'm going to read, I'm keeping in mind how much reading I have to do for this. So when I'm reading 15 pages a day of that, and then I'm balancing it out with a chapter or two from these books. Besides that, I also find time, somehow, to read for myself. And the book that I'm reading right now is called Hench, which is by Natalia Zena Walschatz. I don't know if you can see that very well in my Kobo. Oh, I think you can. I might not have to put in the book cover. I might put a colored version in just so you can see it a little bit better, because I'm trying to work my way through the Canada Reads books so that I will have actually read them all before the competition happens this year. For those of you who are not Canadian or haven't heard of it, Canada Reads is the annual title fight is what they call it, but essentially they have famous Canadians each pick a book and then defend it. And they have a debate about the book. It's usually like the one book that all of Canada should read under a particular theme. And then it takes place over the course of a week, and they vote a book off every week until the last book left standing wins. Usually I watch it, but I haven't read the books, so this year I'm making sure that I want to actually read the books. I'm very much enjoying Hench so far. It essentially takes place in a world where, like, supervillains and superheroes have become, I don't know if capitalized is like the right word, but essentially like it's a business, and some people who are not necessarily in the best position need to make money, and they're like, cool, I'll work for a henchman. And it's very funny because it's like, how is that any worse from like working for someone in a hedge fund, or like, you know, some of those people in society that you're like, wow, you're only really working to benefit yourself, or like you're just working to exploit labor of thousands of people. This is terrible. So it's very interesting commentary on society that way. I think one of the things with my whole reading schedule that's going on that I keep in mind when I'm reading for myself or just reading for pleasure is that that's what it's supposed to be. It's supposed to be an enjoyable thing. And honestly, some days at the end of the day, I am so zonked from all the reading that I've done for school that I like don't have it in me to pick up a book and read something completely fresh. I try to kind of cycle through different things, so I'm at least reading other things for myself, whether that's just keeping caught up on all the webcomics that I'm reading, starting a new webcomic, or maybe going over some fan fiction, something that I find for me personally doesn't take as much energy or brain focus in the moment, can kind of help, but it feels good to always have another book on the go that I can go to without having to be scheduled in my reading. And I know that's one of the biggest critiques of the way that the education system kills loves of reading in kids, is by forcing them to read things that they don't necessarily want to read. For me, all of these books, I'm a nerd, so I'm enjoying reading them, I'm enjoying learning them. That's not to say that I haven't read books in class that I've absolutely hated before, because that has definitely happened. But two, the other thing is by forcing kids to read within a specific time frame. Those time frames aren't always manageable for people, especially with people who have learning differences. That might not be the most feasible way for them to approach the subject, and it also just like kind of strangles the love of reading when you're counting pages. I don't mind it too much, and I try to be pretty lenient with myself, that if I'm reading Dracula and today I was really getting into it, so I was like, I'll read an extra 5 pages. It'll help me out if I'm like stressed out later on in the week and I don't necessarily have the time to do my reading. But that's something that I've mandated for myself. I think if the teacher was telling me to do it, I would get annoyed. Like I said, I completely ignored the rules and just kind of went ahead because I was like, I'm enjoying the story. And to tell kids, like, I remember one of my teachers, when we split up the book, he was like, if that page ends in the middle of a sentence, you are not to finish the sentence. And I hated it. I was like, this is stupid. Like, why are we trying to kill our understanding of the book or the narrative by like cutting off in the middle of a sentence? Like, you should just be able to tack it over to a page, or we should have broken it up by chapters. There's a lot of work that needs to be done to just encourage kids to read what they want to read, when they want to read, and just do it for the joy of reading instead of making them feel like it's homework, because once you feel like it's homework, then that's just going to strangle it from you. And yeah, sometimes I have to push myself through getting my readings done for the day that I don't really want to do, but at the end of the day, it is something that I enjoy doing. It's the reason that I came to school to study this. I'm a bit of an academic and a nerd, so it's something that I enjoy doing. and it's something that I'm looking forward to continuing as I finish up my degree soon, which is terrifying, but also really exciting. So yeah, that's everything that I'm reading right now. I hope this video was interesting for you guys. I know it's a little bit of a different take at looking at what I'm reading, but I was wondering if people have been looking at my Goodreads and being like, why do you have 6 books on the go right now? So I thought I would kind of address that. If you'd like to hear me more talking about my reading schedule or my reading routines, please leave me a comment down below. Otherwise, I think I should have some maybe book reviews coming your way, and I do also want to put together like an e-reader versus physical book type video that will be coming out your way soon. Anything else you guys have for me, comments, suggestions, or recommendations, please leave a comment down below. I do read them all and I appreciate it, and I do work to adapt what you're telling me into my videos, so it means a lot to hear from you guys. Otherwise, my Goodreads and my Instagram will be linked down in the description box. Please feel free to subscribe and ring that bell so you get notifications when new videos come out. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next video.